afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We are a humongous channel that covers Duggar news. So if you're brand new, welcome. We love to discuss all the happenings. We don't get it all, but we do get the nuggets. And if you are a subscriber, welcome back. And if you are a member, thank you so much for supporting my channel and helping me deliver content to you every single day. If you haven't checked me out on social media before we get started, check out my descriptions below, and you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where I post ahead of time whenever I go live. Also, if you haven't subscribed, do so over here and ring the bell for notifications for when I go live. Okay, so for a couple weeks now, we have been talking about Derick and Jill Dillard. Jill is the second oldest daughter of the Duggar family. She is child number 4 because Jana and John David are twins. She has been married to Derick for a while. I don't even know how many years at this point. They have 2 children. They are also notoriously were kicked off the show after Derick made some statements on Twitter about Jazz from I Am Jazz on TLC that TLC said was not consistent with the message that they had as a network. But there's also been speculation that he wasn't really kicked off for that reason, but rather that Jim Bob wanted him off because he was a liability and because there had been some sort of falling out between him, the in-laws, and Jill. Since they left the show in 2015, or not 2015, I'm sorry, a couple of years ago, Jill has not been seen very much with her family. She rarely posts photos with her family. Most recently, she did not have Thanksgiving or Christmas with her family, rather spending time with her husband and her 2 children with friends. On Instagram, the only family members that she really posts photos with is her cousin Amy King, who also is no longer in or isn't a part of sort of the Quiverful movement. She is her cousin from Jim Bob's sister. So she is their first cousins. Amy has been vocal about not buying into all that stuff. Amy's husband drinks beer. Amy wears bikinis. Jill wears pants. Jill has her nose pierced. Jill talks about a lot of things that are more progressive than what her parents have pushed in her entire life. But there had been a lot of indications that Jill had been moving away from her family, but we had no sort of practical statements from either her or Derick, her husband, about if there was a rift between the family. It was obvious on social media that they weren't spending as much time together. She wasn't posting photos with her sisters, but it wasn't obvious what happened or what could have gone wrong. Well, since around Christmas, Derick has been answering questions on Instagram, and he was at it again last night, actually answering more questions about his time on TLC, along with some questions about whether or not they were paid, more insight into that. And as it continues to get more involved, it appears as though Derick is not going to stop sharing his truth because he consistently is going back to this post to ask questions after people are going there to ask more questions. And I noticed one of the questions that he actually answered was by a longtime subscriber of mine, Mindy. So way to go, Mindy. You actually got a response from Derick. Yay, Mindy. She and I talk in DMs all the time, and she is a big advocate for individuals leaving this sort of world. So here was how it all started. So there was this post over here, and she said, okay. Or are you saying that you believe that you weren't paid enough for your efforts? You would have had the right to be upset either way. I'm just so surprised. For the Little People Big World, each cast member, aka family member, got separate contracts, even as minors, and were paid accordingly. Jeremy talks about this on his podcast, and he didn't even earn millions, but several hundred thousands, and he was able to put toward college. He also doesn't get paid anymore since him and his wife don't film anymore. I assume 19 Kids and Counting on would be the same. It was the same network. The children should have had contracts or had a trust set up for their name for later. There was also money disputes on the LPBW show as the little brother Jacob felt underpaid and left the show. Anyway, I just was curious about exactly what that meant, what you mean by all of this. Good luck in law school. By the way, my husband did law school, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I've previously mentioned volunteerism as it relates to our past work with the show, and volunteer means volunteer. While we began as volunteers, it eventually became apparent that it wasn't even volunteerism, because typically volunteerism assumes that you can leave without serious risks, such as legal and financial threats. What that meant, what you mean by all this. Good luck in law. Oops, sorry. In addition to the extreme emotional pressure from within and without your family, which unfortunately end with painful burning of bridges just so that you can protect your family. So again, going back to this whole, Jim Bob has pressured the kids into filming. He's claiming that it's to volunteer for their mission work on the show as a way to spread their love of the Lord. And he's saying that it wasn't really volunteers, because volunteers can leave at any time if they want. And he and Jill did not feel like they could leave at any time if they wanted. And he's also saying that in order to leave, they had to burn bridges, which begs the question, was he deliberate in speaking out about jazz because he knew it would upset the actual network? Did he know that that would be sort of the proverbial nail in the coffin that would allow them to get out? Because he did say as well that Jill was forced to film after everything came out about Josh, and that she didn't want to. She didn't want to be on the show after everything happened with the release of all the information of what her brother had done to her. But she felt like she couldn't leave because of pressure of threats from her father. So that made me think, did he do this deliberately in order to piss off Jim Bob or the network so they could get let out of their contract? It wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. He does make a lot of controversial statements on Twitter, but these comments seem to come at a time when they were unhappy on the show, and it may have been a way for him, or an excuse for the network to let him go, and a way for him to get away from his family. It's hard to know, but I would say that sounds a little bit more plausible to me. And he hasn't shied away from speaking out since. And then Mindy, way to go, girl. Sorry about that. Makes a lot of sense now why you put up a fundraiser for your mission trips. Explains a lot. Thank you for speaking out. People were stumped at how you and Jill had no money when the show brings in millions each season. Anyway, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, Derick. I hope your mother is doing well and she's a beautiful person and raised a good man with integrity. And he said, thank you for recognizing this. Living a life in the public's eye has taught us that it is best not to reply to every rumor and piece of fake news that is circulated online. It would be a full-time job if we even attempted to do so. However, because of certain rumors and criticisms, such as rebuke for raising missionary support when we supposedly had money for being on a TV show, I think it's important to address certain rumors with those who follow us. Thank you for your love and support that we can always count on in our own fans and friends. So he has been, and this has probably been one of the bigger criticisms that he and Jill have received, is that they asked money for their missions trips. And then he also was on Twitter saying that he couldn't believe that TLC didn't offer to pay his insurance, Jill's insurance, after she had a complicated birth for her second child, even though the birth was a production for the network. So they had a whole special about her having a baby, and they had the wedding as a whole special for the network and for the show. And he insists that they never got paid for any of that. He said they had their own insurance, but it would have been nice if the network would have at least allowed them some courtesy and some incentive for what they're doing to make money for the network. Now, there's a lot of questions about how he insists that the kids don't have contracts at all. It's estimated that the Duggars receive about $25,000 to $40,000 per episode as a family. So that's the whole grand caboodle, right? And each season can be 9, 10, 12 episodes. So it's not a ton considering the amount of revenue the network is making, but TLC is known not to pay their casts of their reality shows very well. I would say probably the most well paid on the network was Kate from Kate Plus 8, but other shows they make next to nothing. Like for instance on 90 Day Fiance, they make so much, they make peanuts. And some of these people are basically filming just to have their stories shown. They don't make much of anything. But if they're only making 25 to 40,000 per episode, and there's 800,000 million of them on the show, they're not taking home that much if he actually decides to share that money with his kids. Now, some people say that he does financially help the children, like say Jessa and Ben, because Ben doesn't have a job. A lot of people say, well, he homeschools the younger Duggar children. Yeah, but that's not like gonna pay his bills. He does some handiwork for Jim Bob, and he's in school, I think, to become a preacher, but even a preacher doesn't make that great of money once they do start working initially, okay? So a lot of people have been speculating for a long time that Jim Bob and Michelle actually support Jessa and Ben because they don't have jobs. So with the show sort of like, with risk of the show coming on, more of the girls have been starting to do stuff on Instagram for influencing and starting YouTube channels. Jessa, for one, has been spending a lot more time uploading content to her YouTube channel. Jill has been doing this for a long time, and she has recipes that she shares, and they have a family blog, and they have a P.O. box now, and they have a YouTube channel. So Jill has been doing this since she left the show, obviously, because they aren't receiving any money from the show. But in the wake of all of this, Jill has been really quiet. She hasn't really been answering any questions. She hasn't said anything publicly. But she did share this, which I think could actually be sort of a cue into how she's responding or how she's processing what's going on. So she says it's a type 6, and I don't know where it comes from, but it says, when I share stressors, I love to process through them, but I don't need you to fix them. The less I know, the more I overthink. When you ask me to make a decision, give me all of the information. If you think I made a good decision, let me know. Sometimes I spend so much time thinking through the implications of every option that I feel stuck. Hearing I made a good choice helps boost my confidence. I really want the whole truth. Interesting. I really want the whole truth. I wonder sometimes how much of the truth they actually heard as children. I appreciate it when you let me work through the what if statements swirling in my mind. I ask questions because I want to fully understand. I'm not intending to challenge you or compete with you. And that's one thing about that world, is that if you ask questions, especially the girls, to the men, you are questioning them. You are trying to exert your power when you are supposed to be submissive. So some of these statements really beg the question to me, is like, is this directed at her parents maybe? I might be anxious at times, but I'm evaluating different outcomes, and for me, analysis is not necessarily anxiety. I like predictability, routine, and consistency. I love to have fun, and I can be spontaneous, but it helps when it feels more like a moment of spontaneity than a life of chaos. Ooh, did she have a life of chaos? Sometimes I just need what I already know to be affirmed, which tells me, does she need affirmation from her family that what happened to her was not okay and that it wasn't her fault? Because in this world, it is definitely pushed that a woman is always at fault in instances of abuse, because it's a woman's responsibility not to defraud a boy to think impure thoughts. And if they do think impure thoughts, it's always, what was the girl wearing? What was she doing? How was she behaving? And it's always the victim's fault, which likely is how she was raised to believe, and why she minimized what happened to her when she was interviewed by Megyn Kelly on Fox after everything was released. She defended her brother, for crying out loud. It's crazy. So with all that being said, Jill is taking her subtle ways, I think, of sharing how she feels about things. Probably hasn't had any questions answered by her parents, and Derick is doing apparently a damn good job of defending his wife and speaking their truth. I still think that Derick needs to write a book. I know so many people would read it if he divulged all of it. I would love to interview him. I wish he would actually respond to me. I've sent him I've sent him messages on Instagram. So Derick, I'd love to talk to you. And I don't even know if he watches this show. He watches my channel anyway. But either way, slowly but surely, there's no way to deny now what we have been like knowing for years. This family is deeply flawed, deeply dysfunctional, and the children have been used as a means for Jim Bob to make money, and then withheld that income by Jim Bob by threats of legal action, according to Derick, or, threats of being shunned, I guess. And now Jill is shunned essentially from her family. So they've burned bridges. He has been clear. And it's clear by them not going to the home, not being able to go to the house without Jim Bob's permission, not going to family holidays anymore. This is likely on a path of maybe not repairable. I mean, don't say never, but there's still that looming investigation. There's still so much on the horizon going on. I would be shocked if we don't continue to learn more from Derick. All right, so tell me what your thoughts are about this all. Do you think her processing was a direct at her parents? What do you think about the forced volunteerism with threats of legal action? And what do you think about the fact that they had to burn bridges? And do you think he potentially made those comments about Jazz in order to get fired? All right, you guys, I'll be back later with more. And if you have tips or anything that you'd like me to cover, or if you have connections to people that you would like me to cover, let me know. I'm always available in my DMs on social media. Bye, guys.